I'm a tough grader and actually did a rookie type report card, and really no one got A's. But I mean, you got to give Jalen Hurts an A. I mean, even a tough grader myself would probably give him at the lowest a B plus.
Hey, Eagles fans, if you're a subscriber to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, you are already registered to win a pair of season tickets for the upcoming season. That's right, you could win a pair of season tickets for the upcoming 2021 season just for being a subscriber. If you're watching and you're not a subscriber, do it now. Subscribe to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel right now. What do you need to do? Subscribe right now.
Yesterday we had a chance to talk to our friend Gary Cobb from Fox 29 in Philadelphia. Now our friend Josh Tolentino from the Philadelphia Inquirer joins us here now. And I'll tell you something, Josh, I want to start it out with this. I started the show yesterday, and I did it even again today with Nick Sirianni. I didn't know, and if you watch the Urban Meyer game, Urban Meyer was all over the place. There was no design. There was no creativity. It just looked like the thing was a mess. When I watched Sirianni, the designs of the plays were brilliant. The spacing, the poise, the flow of the game. To me, the rhythm was the most shocking thing because you and I talked a couple weeks ago, Josh, and these guys had not played in any really game situation and all been organized practices. I don't know, maybe you saw something different, but I was impressed by the way the team's rhythm was. What says you?
Dan, I think the very first preseason game when we saw Joe Flacco throw to Quez Watkins and he burst off for about like a 60, 70-yard touchdown on a wide receiver screen. I think at that moment, Nick Sirianni was like, we're throwing this dude week one in the season opener because they went to him 3 straight times, and that wasn't the only time. Later in the game, they went to Devontae Smith, I think 4 straight completions in a row. What we saw, I think, was very scripted, and not just that. Obviously, they executed. But what I really enjoyed, seeing Sunday's game in Atlanta was Jalen Hurts' ability to really make his checks at the line, and not just that, but move around in the pocket. And last year, I think we've seen this all throughout his career at Alabama and Oklahoma. He's a really good on the run. He's good with his feet. But last year, it seemed like he, became a little bit too reliant on that. It just seemed like on Sunday he knew when to get out of the pocket, knew when to run the ball. I think he only ran 6 or 7 times, but he damn near averaged about 10 yards per rush. So, obviously very impressed with Sirianni's scripted play calls, but even just as impressed of how Jalen Hurts managed that game.
Josh, I want to throw this into the conversation too, because a year ago, look at the offseason. There were a lot of teams with a lot of noise, and the Philadelphia Eagles are, they're not immune to that as well. There was a lot of noise. You got rid of the coach. You got rid of Carson Wentz. A game like this, and I'm not – by the way, the Atlanta Falcons are terrible. They were not prepared, but I'm not one of these guys that go, well, you can't count that game. It's the NFL. I know what it's like to play against a team like that. And so if you go on the road – and
those guys are still making more money than us. They're making millions of dollars to be on that field. So
absolutely, and they're professionals, just like you said there. But a win like that and the way that they won, that's got to go a long way, don't you think, Josh? In the locker room with the veteran guys, because they didn't know what Nick was going to be like in play calling, handling timeouts going into halftime. That had to have been something that really gave a boost, I would think, to the morale of what the organization did in the offseason.
Yeah, Miles Sanders, he was the first player to speak to us after the game. I'll kind of replay it for you. He burst through the double doors to the press conference room and gives out like a Ric Flair type, woo! And then just a couple questions in, he's like, how many more questions you got? I'm trying to go back to the party that was in there. And that was really obviously the atmosphere that was, they afforded themselves after that victory. But we talk a lot about buy-in and, all these first-year coaches. Nick Sirianni was, and one big takeaway that I found was that a couple veteran defensive linemen talked to us after the game, and including Eric Wilson as well. They talked about how Nick repeatedly has told them in team meetings leading up to the game, man, I was really nervous. My first ever press conference. I was basically, almost whatever you want to call it. I was a mess. And then, it blew up across every outlet that you saw across the nation. And he used that kind of as a motivation factor to, let's let our talking do on the field. And to Nick's credit, I mean, he's vastly improved as a talker. And, obviously you deal with him as well. He's very detailed, as detailed as you can be, as you can ask for as a reporter to a coach and all those interactions. But getting back to your point, I mean, again, the atmosphere he created. And one thing, another takeaway, this goes back to Hurts. There's plenty to talk about from the game. Devontae Smith, Kenny Gainwell, we go on and on. But one thing that I took away in their celebration video was that Jeff Lurie, the owner, he went up to Jalen Hurts, and we saw that video of him giving him a hug in the locker room, grabbing him by the head, and pulling him in. So I know there were a lot of questions throughout the summer about the reports on Deshaun Watson and Jalen Hurts, and they obviously waited a long time to name him the starter. But 1 week in, Jalen has proved that he's more than worthy to be in the conversation.
Let's get to him now, and I'll say this to you too. I think all the things that you mentioned about him, his poise, his calmness, the checks at the line of scrimmage, there's no question that Sirianni does feel comfortable in the fact that he's a cerebral guy at the line of scrimmage. I mean, I took away his smarts and his ability to be able to see the field. When he didn't see the field, Josh, he moved a little bit, kind of the way that Russell Wilson, not Lamar Jackson, not the guys that take up off, going up the field, but creating passing lanes for himself so that he could have a clear view and to move the linebackers in the secondary over to create space for his wide receivers. That's as good. All the mistakes he made last year and all the things that he has learned in his college career, I think it really came to a head here against Atlanta. And I feel pretty comfortable going into the San Francisco game. I mean, give me a grade on what you thought he really, performed at against the Falcons.
I'm a tough grader and actually did a rookie type report card, and, really no one got A's. But I mean, you got to give Jalen Hurts an A. I mean, even a tough grader myself would probably give him at the lowest a B+. Obviously, there's always going to be corrections and such. But if we dial back to one specific play, Devontae Smith's touchdown, so much had to go right on that play. Obviously, Zach Ertz picking off his guy without, getting flagged right after the line of scrimmage. Devontae Smith, executing that hesitation move to perfection to free himself at the line of scrimmage. But if you look back and you look at Jalen, right before he kind of tosses, it was a basket type catch, a very easy touchdown. All he had to do was float it in there. But if you look back, for just a slight second, he looks off the back end of the secondary, the safety that was there, to shift him into the other direction. And it's just like that slight second.
Right.
You don't see that from many rookie or second year quarterbacks, and that's a lot of the maturity. Again, going back to last year, not necessarily in that occasion would he run the ball, but you don't know if he makes that just that slight look to the right side to look off the safety just to free up Devontae even more. I mean, Devontae was very free. He was probably going to catch it either way, but just those types of moments of maturity that we've seen from Jalen Hurts. And honestly, we saw a little bit in the joint practices again with the Patriots and the Jets, but to have it under the lights or, under the, when games are actually mattering, I think that's the difference here, is that he's performing again at a clip that we hadn't seen at a consistent level this past season when he got those 4 starts last year.
Josh, I gotta go to the big boys now, and I gotta tell you, man, that O-line for I hadn't gotten a chance to watch and really break down O-lines for the Eagles, but this guy Kelsey that goes up to the second level, slips and scoops up to linebackers. He's running down the field, blowing guys up. This Jordan Mailata gets his money on Friday, goes out and kills someone on the field. I mean, that offensive line was as good as I've seen offensive lines play. Reminded me of the Cowboy line of 4 years ago, when they were dominant at the point of attack. And hell, I'll even go back further. It reminded me, I hate to do this to Eagle guys, but it reminded me of that offensive line that the Eagles won the Super Bowl with. I mean, of all the units, that had to be the most impressive unit, including the wide receivers, on what those guys were able to do. They ran the ball well, too.
And I'm sure you probably saw the viral clip of Jordan Mailata and Jason Kelsey walking out of the stadium. I actually saw that from a distance as it was happening, and I was like, that looks like a Bud Light can. Those two Bud Lights were very well deserved for Jason Kelce, for Jordan Mailata, for really the entire offensive line. And throughout training camp, Dan, you and I have talked about it. I've written about it many times, but Jalen Hurts is going to struggle at some point this season. I mean, he's a second-year quarterback. It's inevitable in the league, but he can mask those miscues, those mistakes, with a really good offensive line. And if they continue to perform, I mean, at that level that they showed they're capable of, really one of the biggest surprises I think we saw in the summer is that, all these different rankings and ratings, they were actually ranked a lot lower than I think expected. Yeah. I personally believe that they're a top 10 unit, and maybe even higher than that, a top tier unit in the league. And they definitely showed that on Sunday. We'll see how as competition ticks up here over the next month rapidly. But I think they were very underrated coming into the season. I mean, you look at the names across the line. Lane Johnson, the best right tackle in the league. You saw what Jason Kelce did, just powering over guys. They locked up Jordan Mailata, to be one of their franchise tackles on the opposite side of Lane. But even the guys in between, Brandon Brooks, Isaac, I mean, and they have some depth there too. I think if you were to rank the position groups heading into the season, I had offensive line at the very top.
Absolutely. There are a couple more questions here for you here. The defense, were you impressed with the way that they did give up some yardage early on, and then all of a sudden it just seemed that maybe in the middle of or maybe to the later part of the second quarter, they started controlling the line of scrimmage a little bit more. I thought Fletcher Cox played a better second half, and they kind of controlled the line of scrimmage better. But I think it was like 120 some odd yards rushing. That's not too bad in today's NFL. But what were your thoughts on the way the defense played?
Yeah, obviously in football, we talk about this all the time about anyone who watches football. There's one ball, but there's 11 guys. Mostly I'm focused on either the skill position players, if it's the offense, or the trenches down there in the defense. And I was paying attention down there quite some bit, Dan. You mentioned Fletcher Cox. I mean, his play did improve as the game progressed, and I think we saw in the third quarter, really when Atlanta was playing from behind, they started generating more attention to Fletcher Cox. That opened up one-on-one opportunities for his teammates across the line. Obviously, Javon Hargrave getting 2 sacks, Hassan Ridgeway even getting down there to Matt Ryan, bringing him down on his back. But not just that. I mean, Brandon Graham was consistently causing disruption. And one of the biggest things I think I would say is that it wasn't too much of a surprise. I think we saw the first 2 weeks of camps, really before the Eagles saw any other competition, before those joint practices, when it was the Eagles versus the Eagles. So when it was Jalen Hurts versus the Eagles defense, the Eagles defense came away, and I think this was written about heavily, but the Eagles defense were winning a lot of those matchups. And to go back to that point, is it more of Jalen struggling, or is it the Eagles defense were they just that far ahead? It could be alluded to both. So, but I don't think it was too much of a surprise. I think there's still some things that Jonathan Gannon wants to unleash. I don't think we've seen everything yet in just week 1. And that's the most exciting part. And he even spoke to that a little bit today earlier during his availability. And so far, so good for Jonathan Gannon. I mean, just so many different pre-snap stunts and twists, how many people he's bringing. One thing that again, before I throw it back to you, to point out, man, he was mixing his packages, 3 forwards, 3 fronts. I think I might have seen a five-man front. When you're doing that against a veteran quarterback and having success against a guy like Matt Ryan, I mean, I think that speaks volume. And, we'll see how they defend Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo here this upcoming Sunday out here in Philly.
You're dead on. I mean, that shows versatility and also shows hybrid, where you can put a guy's hand in the dirt and you can also stand him up. You can go to a 5 front, 3 front, 4 front. And that's almost impossible for a quarterback to be able to take that intel and process it. 2 last questions for you. Give me one thing that you took away from the game that you thought that they needed to improve on.
One thing that they needed to improve on, I think one thing that I felt like one of the players felt like he had to prove was the run game. And I think you saw Miles Sanders running with confidence. He barely played at all in the preseason. I'm not even entirely, I want to say that he didn't play at all in the preseason. I think there were a lot of questions about his readiness, and this can even go with Jalen Hurts. He only played those 2 series against the Steelers. missed the game with the Patriots, obviously with the illness, and then was ruled out against the Jets in the preseason finale. I think there were questions about readiness, and everyone's talking about there was no preseason last year. There was a preseason this year. Jalen only got those 2 series. I think he only threw 7 passes. I think Miles Sanders, Jalen Hurts showed that they were ready, and not just that. If I was to point out one more, rookies are ready for this stage. Kenneth Gainwell. I'm working on something really big on him this week, talking to some important people in his life, giving me some calls later today. Look out for a story, Dan, on Thursday's Inquirer on Kenneth Gainwell. Man, he showed he's ready. I think he had 10 carries, almost 40 yards. Obviously had that touchdown at the goal line. And obviously everyone's talking about Devontae Smith, and it's much deserved. 6 catches, tied a franchise record with Deshaun Jackson for the most receptions in a debut. He's the real deal. And I know a lot of people were questioning his size, but I wasn't one of those guys. And I want to be adamant about that. All throughout the summer, I was a firm believer that his talent was going to transition. Here's one good way to put it is that if the defensive backs can't touch you or keep up with you, how can they tackle you? So, he's proven that he's able to take a tackle. So I think Devontae Smith, we saw that he's going to get heavy usage in Nick Sirianni's passing offense.
Yeah, finally here. 6 catches, by the way, 71 yards and a touchdown, and a really nice corner catch there by Jalen to him was spectacular. I would say this to you, coming out of a week like that, and then you got these next 2 games where you have Niners and Cowboys. It's going to tell us a lot about these Eagles here in these next 2 games here, because you're going to take on a good offense and a pretty complete football team in San Francisco. Even though Jimmy G's not that great on the road, they do have to travel to East Coast. It's still going to be a factor when they go into the link. Managing expectations, too, when you come out of a win like that, where you've had a season like you did a year ago where you were 4-11-1, tempering expectations, got to take this thing 60 minutes every week, don't they? I mean, everybody's excited. There's a great party going on, but here we are now, game week, 49ers, right?
Yeah, it's almost like, Nick Sirianni in his press conference with us on Sunday, he was very honest and truthful about how happy they were feeling in the locker room. But, it goes without question that he mentioned, obviously having to concentrate on San Francisco. And, obviously across the NFL, they have that 24-hour rule. And today, all they really wanted to talk about was the Niners. And, they're such an interesting team right now. There's question marks, and obviously they've got some injuries to their offense. But when there's so much unknown, again, about Trey Lance, about Jimmy Garoppolo, about who's going to be in there, I think Jonathan Gannon, and one thing that, here's a big takeaway from my conversation with him earlier today. Jonathan Gannon, the new Eagles defensive coordinator, limited the Falcons to 6 points. We asked him, how are you going to defend Jimmy and Trey, when they're mixing, 2 quarterbacks in there at the same time, when, it depends on the play call. How do you get your guys focused on that? Man, he's provided such a detailed answer on that, whether they're playing man, whether they're playing zone, which we saw a lot of on Sunday. All that Eagles player, whether it be Avonte Maddox, Darius Slay, Steve Nelson, Fletcher Cox, anyone on the starting defense, they just have to focus on one part of the field. And that's what Jonathan Gannon stressed. It didn't matter who the quarterback was. And if they take care of that assignment, much like what we saw against Atlanta, and, the front 7 played a big impact on their success. But if they're taking care of their individual assignments, it really won't matter who the quarterback is. And, that might be a small statement to some, but very philosophical for Jonathan Gannon to firmly believe that. And you know what? The Eagles showed that on Sunday.
260 yards they only gave up in total offense to the Atlanta Falcons. So
after giving up 140 in the first 2 series. So, that's
I know, man. That was really good. Okay, I got to sneak this last one in. Does Manny Diaz survive this year?
You're talking about Manny Diaz out of Miami?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I have a little soft heart, obviously, for Miami.
I love Manny. I love him. But I don't know, man. You struggle against App State and get crushed by Bama. I don't know.
Hey, this is my message, and I actually talked to Devontae about this. Just don't bring out the turnover chain, when you're down by like 3-4 touchdowns. I mean, I know I
was embarrassed.
Yeah. Hey, they got to implement, that's something that's so great for the culture, and they've made it so famous, much like, I guess, you look in baseball, the Padres, when Tatis or Machado hits a home run and they got that chain. I mean, Miami they are known for that turnover chain, but against Bama, hopefully, I mean, for Miami's sake, they don't face those situations where they're down by that much and, they have a turnover. But, bring it out when you need the juice. I mean,
not when you're down 31, man. Come on now.
Yeah, I think they'll figure it out, though. I think that's obviously a very storied program, and they had some big losses with Greg Rousseau and obviously Jalen Phillips, staying in Miami. But I think Manny will figure it out.
I can't wait, man. I appreciate you doing this, Josh. Everybody, make sure you go over to the Philadelphia Inquirer and read my friend's column. We'll be doing that. When's that column come out again?
On Gainwell Thursday. It'll be in Friday's paper, but I'll post it on Thursday. Again, talking to a few of his close loved ones and coaches. And, he even trained with Miles Sanders in the offseason. So looking to include a lot of detail in that piece. But, we never stop working out here, Dan.
I got you, man. It's Philadelphia and it's the Eagles. Of course you don't. Appreciate you doing it, Josh. Thank you, my friend.
Hey, appreciate it, brother. Have a great rest of your show, Dan.
You got it, man. Thank you so much. All right, we'll take a brief timeout, get back to all your spins. Keep it here on the National Football Show.